let's talk about the Jungle Book and the second Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. Uh, Obviously, they're famous for being the basis for the Disney movie The Jungle Book. Only about half the stories are actually about Mowgli, the main character from the film The Jungle Book. The others are other stories, chiefly of the Indian jungle, but there's a couple actually of the Arctic as well. Randomly, there's different stories that are sort of filter apparently into this the Indian milieu where these stories are collected. They are technically children's books, but they're certainly well worth reading for adults. I think, you have in the first Jungle Book you have 3 stories about Mowgli. You have Mowgli's brothers, Kaa's hunting, and Tiger. Each story also has a poem associated with it. Kipling obviously also wrote poems, and then there are 4 books about other stuff, and then the second Jungle Book has 5 Mowgli stories and 3 other stories. Obviously, one thing Kipling had clocked, was that Mowgli is very popular, and that they are, generally speaking, very fun stories. It's interesting certainly to see there's a bit of a shift perhaps between the 2 books that you realise Mowgli's more popular. Also, the second non-Mowgli stories are a slightly more consistent set than in the first book. In the first book, anyway, I'll just quickly say what's good in general about Kipling. He is certainly imaginative. He's very good at capturing, and the great critical scholar Edward Said actually saw this too and liked it, that he's very good at capturing this nation he loves, that he's very familiar with, even if he is somewhat of an outsider in some ways. He loves India, and he captures its people and he captures its traditions and customs wonderfully, and with some degree of authenticity. He's very sympathetic, and one thing really interesting to think about when you think about it is, for a book where I am not sure when, I don't have a copyright date for the right date here, but over 100 years ago, 1900 or whatever, you have a book, I think actually it's before that, you have a book where the main character is an Indian boy. Mowgli, as in the main character in the Mowgli stories, is Indian. And of course, in Kim, his great adult novel, one of the 2 main characters is a Tibetan Lama. So he's very open and interested in different cultures that are involved in the entrepot of India, I guess. And I think he's sympathetic, he's creative, very good at also kind of capturing this sense of anthropomorphic animals, which are still definitely animals, and capturing different voices of the animals, different behaviours. And in the Mowgli stories particularly, this comes up in a couple of other stories. I think in Rikki Tikki Tavi and Queequeg, particularly, there is a bit of this, but also a marvellous capturer and depictor of relationships, of human relationships, albeit some of these humans are in fact animals, but the way in what people feel, what we experience, how we develop relationships with other people. There's a great deal of interior reality and social reality in these books. In the first book, Mowgli's brothers is about Mowgli growing up. Kaa's hunting is actually Kaa, unlike in the film, is Mowgli's friend, hence why he's a wolf cub leader, in fact, though Shere Khan is as well, I think, technically, a leader name. But Kaa and Mowgli, Kaa kind of goes to find Mowgli after something goes wrong, and Tiger is Mowgli and Shere Khan. And in these stories, you see the kind of relationships with that Mowgli has with Bagheera, with Baloo, with Kaa, with the wolves of his family, with Arkela. It definitely feels snapshot. It feels, he wrote 3 stories and then he wrote some other stories, and that was the Jungle Book. White Seed is an Arctic Tale. Rikki Tikki Tavi is one of the best stories in either collection. Very good about this little mongoose protecting his family. Tumai of the Elephant's little boy who is a kind of elephant driver. It's quite fun. Her Majesty's Servants is a bunch, I think it's at the Siege of Kabul or something, but a bunch of animals who are different, have different military roles: camels, horses, donkeys, ox, talking to each other, and this is an opportunity for Kipling to both capture the animal experience of war, which is very sympathetic and interesting actually, but also for him to capture voice and experiment with voice and culture. Second Jungle Book, you've got the Mowgli stories are How Fear Came, which is a myth story within the jungle where Mowgli's listening to the animals, Letting in the Jungle, King Ankus, Red Dog and the Spring Running. And with the stories in the first block, which are roughly, they're all chronological, you have here the story of Mowgli, of him being abandoned, perhaps after being taken away from a human village, up to his adulthood. So you see Mowgli mature, and you get a lot of stuff about Mowgli. You get a lot of time with him, particularly him and Bagheera. Bagheera is really his best friend in lots of ways, and a mentor. Bagheera and Baloo are really his parents, as in the film. Kaa is maybe less of a parent and more of a weird friend. Arkela is wonderful as a character. The lone wolf. A couple of the stories, Letting in the Jungle and Red Dog particularly, and to a degree Spring Running, but I'm more thinking of Letting in the Jungle and the Red Dog, are actually pretty disturbing and heated and difficult. It's not a reason not to read them with kids if you think about it. I think I read them with my kids, who are 6, 4 and 2, for reference at this point. But these are at points quite existential stories, and Spring Running has a bit of that too, as do many of the stories. There's also stuff like in The White Seal. There are pretty frank, not graphic, but frank descriptions of mass seal clubbing. Kipling is frank about the reality that he lived in, that we live in, and about the experiences this boy in the jungle might have. He's a good writer. He writes just good sentences. He writes good characters. His pacing is generally speaking solid. I loved Kim. A very well reviewed book on this channel, and I'd add these to that. These are excellent books. They are digestible. They are easy, but they're also at points quite deep and provoking and profound. And I think many people could enjoy them. And so, yeah, I would say put away the Disney for now. And go and get the source if you are interested, and read it, because I don't think many people will be disappointed. If you've read it, please tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me of other good Kipling books you've read, or other anthropomorphic animal books that you like. Till next time.